Cybersecurity's recruiting, development, and retention playbook sucks. This culture, talent, and skills mini-series will discuss moving away from tired ideas to gutsy practices that yield high-performing and sustainable capabilities. Please enjoy these discussions with a few of our favorite security leaders with tips to help you shape your team's culture and resilience in the face of numbers and skills shortages. Welcome to the Cyber Kumite. I'm Tim Wainwright, and this is Chris Salerno. With us today is Nicole Ford. Today, we're talking about one of the reasons cybersecurity's recruiting, development, and retention playbook sucks. We're bad at doing this for underrepresented communities in our field. Nicole, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Nicole, just getting right down to it, there's been a lot of dialogue on this, and I know that you've done a lot of contribution and are actively involved in a lot of talks and panels on this. So really appreciate you being here with us. Just last week, I read an article by Rob Duhart, formerly at Cardinal Health, now at Google, whom I know a little, not a lot, and have met some of his team at Cardinal. But on June 26th, he had a LinkedIn article called "The Imposter in the Boardroom." And I've got a couple quotes here I want to read because this just really was eye-opening for me, and I think it could really kick us off in this Kumite, in this conversation. He said, "As a Black man, I struggle with feeling like I have to justify my existence, my presence, my value, and my humanity day in, day out." And then something he said really specifically hit me. He said, "Professionally, I have to prove that I really am technical, that I really am capable of what my resume and peers say that I can do." And I thought that everyone I knew in cybersecurity can experience imposter syndrome. I never thought about how Black professionals feel it more. And then I remembered, Nicole, you and I had a meeting when we were still allowed to travel earlier in the year. You and I had a lunch to catch up, and we were talking about how much we valued being technical as security people and really understanding how things work. And the whole thing just came together for me of never realizing what that experience was like and feeling how Rob would feel like an imposter for the very thing that he could be most confident, which is a deep understanding and being technical and how things work. And then he goes on to call us to be anti-imposter. What are your thoughts on how we can do that? What are your thoughts on the idea of being a security imposter or feeling even more like an imposter? And what can we do?
I think he echoes the sentiment of so many Black and African American people that are in the tech field today. There's only a small percentage, but we feel that heightened sense of proving yourself in everything that you do, from going to school, getting a degree, actually taking technical classes, and like what scores did you get in your classes, right? And passing certifications. I know we talked a little bit about the certification game and why is it important or not important, and then how do you really show your technical prowess, right? And so for African Americans, I mean, we have to overcommit to that process, right? It's not just, are we technical, right? Do we have the technical chops? Can we go, with the best of them in the technical arena? But it's also, do I have the right credentials? Do I feel that my technical prowess is enough, right? And then, how do others view me in the space? Do they take me seriously? So for me, being African American or Black and being a woman, I feel like fourfold, right? It's not just, hey, in the past, it's like, okay, women in general have to prove that they're technical, whether it's having, a lab at your house, right? Where you can actually show that you have the skills and then being able to demonstrate it at work. But also it's, when you get in leadership roles, it's convincing the people around you that, absent of being African American, I deserve the role that I'm in. I'm proven because I've gotten all of the right degrees, of, attended the right trainings. I do all of the same things that everybody else does. And it's tough, right? So I think number one, it's how do you how do you make people feel comfortable in their skin, who they are, right? And that they're really being evaluated based on their technical prowess only, or their ability to execute or get something done. There are other ways that I've talked to my company and others about giving African Americans a chance, right, to fail. We have this innate sense of failure, right, that we can't fail. We have to go above and beyond. We have to do 120% all the time, and that there's no room for failure. And if failure occurs, then for some reason we'll get fired, or we'll be removed, or we won't get the opportunities that other people get to fail. And so making it a safe place for people to say, you know, it's okay to fail. And it's okay as a Black man or a Black woman to fail. We all do, right? But making it okay to do that, right?
Yeah. So,
Um,
Nicole, that amazing train of thought there, and you're talking about giving permission to fail, and I think first of all, a security team that doesn't do that in the first place is totally full of itself. For
exactly.
anybody, if they don't give anybody room to fail, to think that in a field that's still as young as ours, that it's all figured out, that there's nothing left to what we're doing for the first time, when in fact uh, the way that threat tactics change, the way that risks change, we constantly have to reinvent, and we constantly have to be willing to fail. And we're not there's probably some security teams that aren't doing that in general for their own people, but they have the wrong attitude. How do we, for minorities, for African Americans who are part of security teams, what else can we do to make that permission to fail and that support of being part of developing solutions? How do we make that more clear?
I think it's through mentorship and sponsorship, right? So the mentorship piece is really if the environment is safe and people feel like they can fail, it's really making sure that you've paired all of your African American employees, interns, whatever wherever you've recruited, pair them with somebody who is, technically adept, who has kind of like a mentorship and a training, like that's something that's innate in them, to help them walk through what this really looks like. It's an everyday walk. So, I understand the threat landscape changes. So we're always trying to catch up, right? So I've got to make it a safe place for my team to fail. And I do. And it's, listen, and it's the dialogue that I have. And trust me, I had a conversation on Friday with one of my female employees, and she was devastated. She had this situation occur, and she was talking to me, and I said, listen, it's okay. Like, it's okay that, you didn't have all of the scenarios thought through and something happened. It's how we recover. It's how we turn the corner that's most important. And it's just making sure that, she understands, like, you're going to get this chance to fail. Now, hopefully you don't do it again, right? Like, you learn from this first time and you don't repeat it. But overall, I think that those lessons for her, like when that happened to her and the way that I handled that situation, really helped her to turn her corner, if you know what I mean.
No, that's great. And so how do you elevate that? How do you raise the visibility of those situations where you, as the senior most security person in your organization, you're providing that type of mentorship, presumably to someone junior? How do we foster more of that?
So part of it has to be a part of your cultural values. So the ability to fail fast, fail forward is something that I think senior leadership needs to really make sure it's a cultural value, right? So as a part of the culture, if it becomes a cultural mantra, right, then people talk about it as you're discussing things with employees, like, how are you doing? What's going on? There was a situation that you had, let's talk about it. And just giving them the opportunity to talk it through and talk about this cultural value called failing fast, fail forward, and how to actually really do that. Help them walk through the scenario. And most of the time what I do is okay, what did you learn? Let's walk through that. And then what would you do differently in the future? And that really helps employees. And again, I've been in cultures where that was cultivated, where it wasn't, you know, it was a fail fast, fail forward culture. And then, you know, there are cultures that are like, you know, you do one thing and that's it. And you have this black mark, you never get promoted, and you never get to get to that next level. So it's really, I think, a cultural thing, and something that senior leaders, even at, you know, my level, I make sure that I talk to my team about. It's okay to fail. It's okay for us to have made a decision, recognize we need to go another way, and pivot.
Yeah, I think that's great messaging and good ideas on how to elevate that and show that example when you're doing that, when you're living that and walking the walk, showing the organization how you do that. As I was thinking through this topic and thinking about some of the questions that I wanted to ask you, I also thought about how I'd seen Jim Routh say once or twice, I've seen him a few times on stage say, women recruit women. Meaning you have to have women leaders to increase gender diversity. And watching Jim's career for a few years as I have, I believe he's done that. He's backed that up and he's mentored women in the space who are now CISOs and deputy CISOs and leaders in our industry. And I was thinking about, and I've admired that and wanted to do more of that in our organization, still working on it. But by my observation, the industry till now has paid more attention to gender diversity than to racial diversity. How can we do more to increase not just Black leaders, but also give opportunities to new practitioners? Because I think, and let's handle that in two steps, right? Because those are two different roles. You're not just going to bring someone in the industry and have them be a leader. It takes time, of course, just like any discipline. But then, so how do we increase Black leadership in cybersecurity? How do we increase opportunities for practitioners?
Okay, so this is, you know, to unpack this, is like, you have to think about how intentional you are. So I'll give an example. There's a program for women called Paradigm for Parity, and it's really about commitments to, you know, ensure that women are 50% of the workforce and leadership. They're at you know, certain percentage. We have to do the same thing for Black professionals, right? So in each organization, the organization has to make a decision as to how they're going to make that commitment like visible for their culture, right? So for Carrier, I mean, we are making some decisions around how to make a commitment that we can stick to, that makes sense for us. I think every company has to do the same thing, is really think about, like, what are the 4 or 5 things you can do? What commitments can you make? And where do you really want to see more diversity, right? So whether it's, I want to see more executives, Black executives, or I want to see more Black directors. I think you have to make it something you can track. It has to be measurable. And
So that, Nicole, that's an example of one of the goals. You mentioned 5 goals, and you don't need to tell us all 5, but that's an example of one of them is putting a number on the number of executives that you want to grow to over a set period of time.
Yep. It's how many executives or percentage, right? So we want to grow X percent of Black executives, or, you know, Black directors at any given time, and putting a time period on it, a time frame, saying we want to do this in the next year, or we want to do this in the next 18 months. I think that that's important. The other thing is partnering with historically Black colleges, or, you know, organizations that really take the time and they have programming for, you know, really elevating Black leaders. So there's a ton of them. For us, NSBE is a big one for us because, you know, we're in the engineering space. And so we're going to give our time, energy, and dollars, right? Because you got to put your money where your mouth is, if it's a commitment that you truly want to see proliferate. And really kind of come to fruition. So those are some of the things that we're doing. Another thing is really being intentional about leadership development for Black and African American employees. It's having those programs, right? So we typically have those programs now for women, and we've done an amazing job there. Trust me, amazing job. But we have to do this. We have to be just as intentional about African Americans and you know, what I call Black and brown people as well, right? To make sure that we're giving them the same opportunities.
That's great. I know, one of the organizations called Y6, my organization's been involved with for a while, and they've been really good to work with. They have national chapters, local chapters, conferences. We've been able to host, local events for a couple of years now, and there's a lot of those types of organizations. Is there something at that scale yet that teams like mine can tap into and start to do networking and start to do job fairs, or really does it need to start on campus, as you were saying, kind of doing more campus work?
So it's both, right? There are a few organizations like ICMCP, right, that are like nationwide that already have a pipeline for you to tap into.
Right.
I think it's also important to get on that campus though, because I think you miss out on a ton of talent that is uncultivated, right? That you know, it to me makes sense to develop those programs at a school, adopt that school and say that these are going to be, and I know we've talked about that. You guys have done that at SRA. You guys definitely have adopted a few schools and you've really invested, and just do the same thing as it relates to African Americans. And I think you'll do well.
Yeah. Nicole, I thought a lot about over the past few weeks what it means to be an ally, and this is a term relatively new to me, although I'd heard it before, but certainly amplified in the past month or so. Are there ways that, as a security leader, you're seeing security teams be allies, or if this isn't specific to security teams, are there other lessons we can learn from other types of teams that you've been involved with?
I think the ally program extends just across, right? So to me, I see ally programs, and in fact, we're building an ally program where, you know, people who are, not Black or not African American can help and kind of support us, right? And so, how do you gain and garner that support?
Yeah.
I think on the female side, specifically as it relates to cybersecurity, we have some ally programs out there,
Right.
and they're starting to develop. I know that there are some African American programs, but they're not at the same scale. So I think ally programs is an area of improvement and something we should work on, because it's powerful when it's done well. I've seen it done well. And one of my former employers, we had an amazing ally program, and it really helped to get people involved. It was a really good way of educating people, and really solving a problem. And it works. It's a very, very effective way to get everybody involved in a situation.
Yeah. So much of that, to me, when I was reading about it, was being proactive about things and rather being passive, as we might have been in the past. And when you were talking about, fail fast, fail forward, and making sure that we're being proactive in recognizing those types of situations, and saying that it's okay to do that, not just for one group of people. I mean, we live and breathe security. Failing is part of this, and making sure that everyone understands that that's okay. Red team, blue team, whatever team you're on.
Yeah.
And that was really that hit me when you said that. I was like, yeah, we really have to let people know that this is okay.
I think CISOs have a heightened sense of what failure really looks like, because I mean, I say it, and I know but it's
We live through a breach.
right. That's what we do. Like, right. Like if there's a breach, we failed. But I mean, in reality, we've learned a ton, right? And not just us, but the organization. We bring the organization along with us through that failure, right? And so that's really, when I talk about the failure mentality and the fact that African Americans are very sensitive about that, that's an area that, our white allies and counterparts can really be sensitive to and really help us through that process, right? So we don't consider that failure just something just on us, but in general, what did we learn from the situation, and how can we improve our situation overall, and as we move forward?
Nicole, these have just been some great insights, and really appreciate you speaking with us about it today. Any parting challenges for security team leaders out there? Challenge Chris and I as we lead SRA. Challenge others who may be listening into this. You know, what can we start doing different now? And
I
it could be
think
recapping some of the great ideas already, but just, you know, what are your takeaways? What can we
I
do?
think take a chance on somebody who may seem like they don't have everything that you're looking for. We take chances on others, and so take a chance on an African American, and then be committed. Be committed to seeing it through. Meaning that, you know, if they lack a skill, make sure they get that skill. Like really mentor and really be an advocate for that person or set of people, right? Depending on who you're taking a chance on. And that's something that's so important. When we talk about getting people to the next level, it's, do they have everything that is required? Probably not, right? Maybe they have 60%, maybe they even have 50%, but take a chance. And I promise you that you won't be sorry. If you take the steps and really kind of walk through their development, you'd be surprised how
That's
people
great.
will come through in the end.
That's great. Maybe that's something that you said earlier. Maybe it's this. It's take a chance and put your best people on it for
Yes.
mentorship, for coaching,
Yes.
for upskilling. And I know that's something that Chris and I can do. So thanks for that. That's great. This has been a really great Kumite. Thanks for joining us. Our guest again has been Nicole Ford. I'm Tim Wainwright, reminding you that I taught Chris everything that he knows.
And I'm Chris Lerno, and knowing that, I'm not sure how we made it this far.